Good evening, everybody. Thursday, January 19th, 2012. I'm looking at Cintas Corporation. As you see here, towards the end of 2011, Cintas had a big gap up day, and it gapped above this key resistance area here, which is this top blue line. And it once it went above there, then it held for several days, which is a typical consolidation. Shook out any of the people that were profit takers, and then it continued higher. And we're in another consolidation period here. As you see, the blue line, the 18-day moving average, is creeping up. It looks like the stock is maintaining a holding pattern here, and it's definitely in a bullish trend. It had a big breakout here on big volume. Nice consolidation phases here. Everything looks completely healthy. The only thing I would worry about here is, are we a little extended? Is the move over? There's a lot of indicators you look at here. You look at the RSI, which is very high here, which is good, which shows that we're in a very strong trend. But you could be setting up for some divergence, but you still could go higher first. And there's a lot of things to look at here, like the MACD. As you see here, you could tell from a while ago, back in August, the MACD was making higher lows. From that August low, then you had the lower price but higher low on the MACD here, higher MACD here in November, higher MACD at the beginning of December here, and then you had the eventual big move up. So if you would have been watching the stock in the end of November or December, you could have easily picked this up in the late 20s, and you could have enjoyed this ride up to 38. So technicals do matter, and you always look for patterns like this. And especially, as you see here, you had the positive divergence on the MACD, and you eventually took out this resistance area here. As you see, if you could just kind of visually see it. Once it cracked that area, it wasn't too long before it really broke out. And then this other resistance area, which was you draw the trend line connecting the two prior tops in July, and you can see that the resistance area was roughly around 34 on that big up day. You see that big volume bar spike. We gapped up and powered through that, and then we held, and then it ran further. And the volume hasn't been as great as that day. It shouldn't be, and the volume's still been pretty decent. So it looks like a very healthy stock. The one thing you got to look out here is you have the a negative MACD crossover, which is a black line crossing the red. You do have this histogram has been ticking down for a while, but I'll actually say that's kind of relieving some of the near-term overboughtness in the stock, and it's actually a positive because there isn't a lot of selling momentum here on the pullback. It's actually consolidating, coiling, and most likely it's probably going to go higher in price. As you see here, you have the stochastic, which is an oscillating stochastic. This is where the pointer is here, and stochastic is typically measures whether the security is overbought or oversold. Typically, when it's in this 20 area, it's oversold. When it gets above 80, it's overbought. As you see here, it's crossing. It's been above 80 for a while, and actually, as you can see here in relation to price, it has done very well while it's crossed above 80, and that's the situation it's in right now. Is it's what we call an embedded stochastic. Basically, when you have 3 trading days in a row that the stochastic stays above 80 or below 20, the trend becomes more embedded, more intense. So until that stochastic pops below 80, you're in a very strong uptrend, and that's what's being illustrated here, in that it's holding above all the key moving averages. It's just kind of moving sideways, and the Bollinger Bands are about to tighten, which, you know, maybe give it another 1 or 2 sessions. These Bollinger Bands are going to tighten, and that means that we're set for another big move. And you would have to go with the trend here, and that would probably mean higher prices. So then you would try to determine, you know, where it could go to. There's one other thing I would look at here is the ADX, which is this green. Here, let me scroll down here on the monitor. The ADX is the last thing here, where the pointer, this big red line, and the green line here. We have a negative divergence on the ADX, which is somewhat of it's a negative, because basically the ADX popped on the initial pop above 34, and since then it's come down and made lower highs, but it couldn't go much higher than where it was before. So that's not a reason to sell. It's just something to take notice of. Okay, next chart I'm going to pull up is the Cintas weekly chart. Taking a little while here. Okay, and Cintas weekly chart. As you see here, the MACD has been really screaming up. It's making some new highs that haven't been seen in the last 3 years. It's very bullish. You had that breakout above the 34 area, which was very important. You are riding outside of the Bollinger Band here, which I told you is somewhat of a danger in the near term, and you could go a little sideways here before another move up, or you could pop into the 40s and then possibly retreat after that. Basically, this chart does look good. You are overbought, but like I said before, stochastics can stay in overbought territory for a while. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you should be a seller, but it is something to take notice of. You do want to also take into consideration what the market as a whole may be doing at the same time. Here's the Cintas monthly chart. This is going back 10 years. So you can see Cintas in 2009 hit all-time lows, I believe. It hit $17.11, and now it's close to $37.92. So it did sell off along with the market, just to show you that if the market does get brutal again, it is capable of selling off. However, that said, what I take interest in here is on the MACD. On the monthly, you had a pullback here in 2011. Looked like some sort of washout event where you had a high in July of 33.91 and you had a low of 26.11, and you see how the MACD pulled back, but it never crossed below, and then it turned back up, and you're getting this very powerful move. Typically, when MACD doesn't have a negative cross, and then it turns back up like this, you tend to have a very powerful move on the upside, and that's what we're getting here. And the stochastic, typically when it only turns down halfway and then turns back up, you also are showing signs of a very powerful move here. So this stock could very easily run into the 40s here in the near term. A strategy that you may want to take is just you could try to buy some calls on it. You could I think you could just flat out buy the stock here. That's probably the best move to do. If you're a little worried about the